sign in with your Google account instead
Yeah,
of using a stream key? Oh, that's weird. Why would you do that? Insecure. Gonna get
want to try
hacked
it out. Want
by
to try it out.
OBS.
Want to try it out. Anyway, we're live.
Oh
Okay,
boy. Look at that.
we're so live, and I think our
We
audio
are so
levels are
live.
pretty even. But I always think that, and I always figure out
Yeah.
10 minutes in that Jonah's louder than me.
If I'm like 50% louder than Henry, you all have got to let us know in the chat because Henry cannot be trusted.
Once again, it's that bias. It's the I don't want to be louder than Jonah bias. Anyway, thank you everybody for tuning in. I do have this like big blown up intro sequence, but it seems to be laggy. But right now it looks fine? Question mark? Um, yeah, I think it looks fine actually, but I'm not going to risk it because last week it actually really screwed up. So we're going to go ahead and do our Q&A this week. As always, we're going to go ahead and start with our patrons, and then we're going to move over into our forum thread, which we have over here, and we got some good questions across both Patreon and our forum. And then from there, we're going to open it up to the live comments. If you're here early, thank you for being early, and I have a job for all of you, which is anybody going forward that says anything like, oh, hey, how come you're not answering our questions in the live chat? Make sure to just fill them in the live chat that we will. Ah, it always turns itself on.
Every time.
Every time. Let me turn that off. But make sure to let them know that we will get to them at the end of the live stream. So thank you all for tuning in. Thank you for taking your digital rights a little bit I don't know. Thank you for taking them a little bit more seriously. And let's get into these. So our first question over on Patreon. This is from our patrons, and we really encourage anyone to join if they like what we do here. And pretty much they ask any downside to the new Signal beta. For those who don't know, Signal released usernames, and we made a whole video about this. So I'll leave that down in the description afterwards. And then in that, you pretty much have to upgrade to the beta to claim a Signal username, which I believe I definitely did. I think you did as well. Have you had any issues?
No, no issues. And I've been using the Signal beta for a while, even before that, and it's generally been pretty stable overall. I'm guessing that they like really tested this 7.0 release because they knew that everyone was going to sign up for the beta when they launched usernames, right? Because I think you sent me like the iOS beta filled up immediately, right?
Yep. Yep, the iOS beta is completely filled up, and I feel like I was part of that problem because I am not normally on the beta channel, and yes, I upgraded to the beta to claim a username, which doesn't make me feel great because I'm also going to probably go back to stable once 7 hits stable.
Yeah.
So I think I'm kind of the problem, actually. But also, I kind of blame Apple for having like a max size. I didn't know there was a max size for beta testers either.
Yeah.
But yeah, I haven't had any issues, and the username's been awesome, and I can't really complain much. I'm still waiting to see everyone kind of catch up to the newest version to see if it's completely synchronized, like people can't see usernames. I'm still seeing mixed information about that as to like who can see a
hmm
username, who can't. But I think that'll all fizzle out with time.
Do you know anything about the Signal desktop beta? Like if you have the stable version on your phone, can you get a username in desktop? Because I don't use the Signal desktop beta myself.
According to Nate, yes.
Okay.
According to Nate, he was able to claim a username on desktop without getting to beta. So for people who aren't using Google Play services or aren't in the iOS ecosystem, you can still claim a username. Again, that's based on what Nate told me. I haven't verified that
Yeah.
myself. But
I thought I heard that as well. So if that's true, that is super cool. Because somebody in the live chat just mentioned that you have to use Google Play on Android to get the beta, which is something I've heard a lot of other people complaining about too, because they don't have it for their regular APK downloads. So definitely an option to explore for sure.
right. Cool. Yeah, no, I'm a big fan.
Yeah.
I do try to avoid beta software though, just for other purposes. I don't like being a guinea pig, so unless it involves this guinea pig getting a little username.
I guess.
I think the first question on the forum is probably a good one for you, actually. This is something you're more familiar with
Uh,
than I am.
Let me see. Yeah, C at the Art of the Self on the forum asked, many videos talk about how passkeys are stored on the phone locally and have the option of also being synced to account for availability slash assurance. Yet when Android 14 arrived on the Galaxy S21, I wasn't given the option to store passkeys locally at all, only using a Google Dash lane. etc. Have you guys or anyone you've talked to had luck storing passkeys locally on your phones? How does this apply to iOS users? Um, as far as I know on Android, it is a part of Google Play services. It's not like an Android built-in feature. Um, and on iOS, I haven't used the built-in passkeys on iOS for a long time now, so I actually am not. I don't remember exactly how they work. If it requires iCloud or if you can use it with iCloud optionally, if you have keychain disabled. Because I use my password manager for all passkeys now, which is probably the direction I think most of these are going in. But if you want something that's like totally local, usually a hardware key is going to be a better choice than a phone, unfortunately, especially on Android, because this is a classic problem with Android, in my opinion. Google just has stopped adding features to AOSP and they add them all to Google Play services now. So it's another one of those features that does require Google integration on their end for that support. I don't know if you have any experience with passkeys on iOS
I haven't used a single passkey
other than
yet.
that.
For me,
Okay.
yeah, not a single one. And I probably should just to test it out, but it's not going to fit into my use case as of right now because right now I use passwords and I use uh, security keys like UTF, which I think in almost every situation is more secure than a passkey.
Mhm.
And so that's currently what I'm doing. And I guess the only situation I think maybe for services, but this I don't know any service that does this where they only have SMS 2FA, password SMS 2FA, but then they have the option for passkeys. Maybe then I could justify passkeys, but I don't know of a service that would do that. Um,
No.
and I guess maybe for services that use TOTP, maybe those services I might transition to passkeys. But I don't have a good, clear passkey workflow yet on my end. I think if I used a password manager that supported passkeys, that would be my go-to, but I don't. So I assume
Yeah.
I don't. I don't think KeePass supports passkeys.
I'm not sure. I don't use it.
Huh. Okay. I'll have to look into that. Next question is from Backfield3779, who's one of our regulars. So thank you for being a regular on the forum. And again, you can join our forum at discuss.techlore.tech. We just have a lot of great discussions out there. And I learned things from it. And so I just really appreciate the community. First question is, Have I Been Pwned allows you to submit your email address for monitoring. Haven't Been Pwned, for those who don't know, is probably like one of the core central places to see if you're in a data breach. It's really great. I think everybody should use it. And lots of password managers and other services actually integrate with Have I Been Pwned. So they say if one email alias from most of your accounts, should those, okay. Sorry, okay. Your email address for monitoring, so you would get notified if it was leaked in a data breach. However, if one uses email aliases from most of their accounts, should those be added there as well? So you would always be aware if one of your aliases has been leaked. That's a good question. I guess that's not a use case I've considered because my password manager automatically integrates with Have I Been Pwned and automatically, I think, checks the emails. So it doesn't matter if I have 50 different emails, it's going to automatically do that. So I guess I would look elsewhere to see if you have a password manager or a feature that integrates with your aliases. But also, I would ask, is it really that important? Because if you're only using one alias per website, then you're probably fine even if there is a data breach on that one website because it's pretty compartmentalized, which is frankly like the main reason to figure out if you were in a data breach, to figure out like, oh, like what's the scope of what can be impacted by this data breach. And if your emails are compartmentalized, then I guess you should be looking at your passwords and other information tied to that account. So I guess the awareness is good, but yeah, I don't have a great solution outside of maybe find some other third-party solution that integrates better with your aliases. But I don't know if you have a different.
Yeah, there are a number of tools like that because Have I Been Pwned does have an API that works super well for that kind of stuff. The only other thing I would add is that, like, if you use a custom domain for aliasing, or if you have like a catch-all and that kind of thing set up, you can add your entire domain to Have I Been Pwned and get notifications for every email on that domain. So, not an option if you're using like the built-in simple login aliases or anything, but if you do use a custom domain, that's probably worth setting up with them, for sure if you want to get those notifications.
Nice. Nice. This next question, I actually did do research going into the second question because I am a little bit, I was put a little bit on the spot because on a surveillance report a few weeks ago, I did call. So NetNewsWire is an RSS feed and it's probably the most popular open source one for iOS and macOS, and I did call it gross. Um, And then they said it follows the Apple's native design and thus looks very similar to apps like Strongbox, which I've commented looks great. So they're asking me to explain myself. And so I actually like did a side by side checking out NetNewsWire as well as my new RSS reader, which is just Reader 5, I think, Reeder. And I also looked at Strongbox. And then I think the reason why NetNewsWire felt gross to me is A, just basic things like the app icon and things that didn't have to do with Apple's design just didn't look great. And then also the big thing is it's relative. So NetNewsWire felt good to me until I started using Reader. And then I'm like, wow, when I go back to use NetNewsWire, it feels gross to me. But I haven't had that experience with Strongbox because I've tried Bitwarden, which didn't make me feel great using it either. I don't like Bitwarden's interface that much, even though it's a great password manager. And frankly, I didn't like 1Password's that much either, which I know is super personal preference because a ton of people love 1Password's interface. So for me, Strongbox did feel like kind of the best password manager from a design perspective, but you're right, it's not that great either because when I compare it to NetNewsWire, it's not that different. So for me, I think it's more of a relative thing where when I find something better, the last thing feels really kind of gross to use. And I feel like that's what I experienced with Reader versus NetNewsWire.
Hmm.
But yeah.
I
What
haven't
do you
used
think?
either of those apps myself. I'm just looking up like pictures of them now. I can see why you would like. Reader really looks like an app that like if you're really familiar and like iOS design, you would like it a lot. And NetNewsWire looks like a classic macOS design where it's more like the macOS email client, and I can see why different people would prefer different user interfaces depending on like what they use a lot and what they're familiar with.
Right. And I
They
wish
both
that.
look nice in my opinion.
Right. I guess that's what I'm saying. So I guess I take back calling it gross. I would say it's not as good relative to what I've become used to in like my design choice. And I think
Hmm.
I wish Strongbox actually followed more of Reader 5's kind of design choices because I think that would make it significantly better. It's just I'm not really happy with the other designs of other password managers. The one that really throws me off is LastPass because LastPass has great marketing, but you
Oh.
actually open the client and it's like disgusting. Like people use it unironically.
Yeah, that is a crazy app. I don't even understand it.
All right, yeah, that's all I got for that one. So I guess yeah, I kind of
Oh,
take back a little bit what I said, but hopefully the nuance helps.
all right. Moving on to the blank space, who's a regular on our forum. They said that they hope we're doing well, and I am. I hope you are. Their question is in regard to 2FA services like Ente Auth, Aegis, or 2FAs. What would be the best procedure you guys would follow if one of these servers got bought out or ceased working? Would you start again and make new seed keys for your accounts for the new 2FA service? Hope that makes sense. Um, Personally, I probably would because I usually uh go through and reset all of that stuff whenever I change like password managers or 2FA apps anyways. But I know a lot of people prefer to like back up other seeds and just reuse them across all the apps. And that's kind of just, I don't know why I do it. It's just a personal thing. I think because I've been using it for such a long time when backups weren't even like a thing you could do, like in Google Authenticator 10 years ago, and that I never got around to like changing my workflow. But I feel like for something like Ente Auth, that's end-to-end encrypted completely and that kind of thing. If they got bought out or they stopped working, the app probably wouldn't stop working locally, so you'd have time to like back up and move to another service, and there shouldn't be a danger in that regard. If there's an app that syncs to the cloud without using end-to-end encryption, I probably would change all that stuff. But
Yeah,
just back up your stuff, I would say. I don't know if you have anything else to add.
yeah. I just think it's good that you're thinking about data portability and thinking about what happens if something stops working, especially in light of recent services like Skiff. And I think that I don't know things like Aegis, they have export options that you should be able to import down the road into other services. So just make sure something has some kind of export option. I do not, for the record, reset every TOTP app that I use like Jonah does, or TOTP account like Jonah does. I just you keep the same seeds personally, but yeah. All right, next question. Pixelated Oaf. I have a question regarding car privacy. I'm curious about if you know of any modern car that has no internet connectivity or sensors, or at least if you can disable such things without losing warranty, or driving a 2003 old Toyota car without that nonsense. But I know they'll have to eventually get a new one, so what would you recommend either to buy or what to do with these days' current models? We've talked about this quite a bit, and I'll try to reiterate like a few of the points that we've made. Um, First things first, there is kind of this golden era of cars right now, which is kind of between like 2010 and 2014, 15. A lot of these cars use 3G for their internet connectivity, and there are no more 3G cell towers. So if you can find one of those cars, you kind of have an offline car as like a workaround because there are no cell towers to connect to. So that's kind of what I'll say. I will say if that isn't an option for you, then you can start looking at newer cars, and you're kind of just going to have to do your best. I know Mozilla did a car privacy report where they talk about some of the better manufacturers. I would also be thinking about what kind of data collection they're doing and if it's first party or third party. I would also be looking at any security incidents with the car companies to see just in general how they're doing with those kind of things. And aside from that, I'm willing at this point to say that I think it's ridiculous to expect people, just the average person, to have to make a car decision based on the privacy implications of a vehicle. And I think that if that is where you have to compromise in your entire privacy journey, which is a vehicle, which is a big thing that, at least in the US, you kind of need to survive, then I think you just have to do your best and just suck it up until we have better options. And I hate saying that because I always like to recommend a better option, but I think that you shouldn't feel guilty if you can't find a good option that works for you and your lifestyle. So that's what I have. Also, just look through general opt-outs as well. Like every car manufacturer normally has some kind of opt-out or something you can do inside the car. Most cars do say like, do you agree to submit data remotely? I think it's almost a law in the U.S. at least, where cars have to like disclaim to you that they're about to submit data. So just do your best to utilize your rights as well. But I don't know if you have any other insight there.
Uh, oh, it's terrible in my opinion.
Yeah, it's
I've been
bad.
I've been like looking at replacement cars lately, and I'm thinking I'm just gonna keep going backwards in time with my car purchases. Like I have a 2009 Honda Civic right now. I'll probably like I'm eyeing some cars from like the 90s and early 2000s to replace it eventually. And I'm just gonna keep working backwards away from all this computer nonsense that I don't need in my car.
Right. Yeah,
It's a
it's
real common thing. I really it bothers me with big appliances like cars, but also like fridges and stuff. It's like I will pay you companies, I will pay you more money to not have a computer in all of my stuff. Like I will like add another $1,000 to take it out, and that would be perfect for me. Come on. But not a lot of new options out there. Ridiculous.
Yeah, it really sucks. It's a really sucky situation, and I do think it can't get worse. I think like at some point in the next 5 years, at least one car manufacturer is going to have to like lean into privacy marketing and be like, oh wait, we can be the one car manufacturer we can advertise. Hey, like we at least like don't share your data with third parties or something. Like at least say something about it,
Hmm.
and then have like at least a competent security team. And I think at that point we can at least somewhat suggest an option that's not as bad. This is my hope, but maybe I'm being optimistic.
Yeah. Lucky225 in the live chat says that they pulled the fuse before they drove off the lot for their 2020 Ford Escape. That probably is worth like considering if you're like researching a vehicle, whether like all of the computery stuff, internet connectivity, etc., is all like on a circuit that you can just disconnect. It might require some DIY work. I don't know if everyone's going to do that with their car, but that could be an option
Yeah,
if you're concerned
that's a
about
good
that.
point as well. Yeah, if you can DIY something, yeah, that's a good point. Thank you.
Guess we'll go on to our
Yeah,
next question here. This one's from Rolls Ice Cream. They're another regular on our forum.
and they
Um,
contribute to the Techler website and catch mistakes on our website. So thank you for your
yeah,
contributions on GitHub. Yeah.
They said that I discovered you could register security keys such as YubiKeys in services like Proton without having one in physical form. I use Bitwarden for this thanks to their passkey creation and storage feature, which is becoming increasingly available in many password managers. Of course, it works because it uses the same standard, and that's when I discovered software-based security keys. As far as I seem to know, these security keys like Windows Hello are dependent on the ecosystem you now belong to, but that won't be the case with password managers like Bitwarden, which are cross-platform, right? And it would be interesting for some people who can afford to pay a minimum of $50 to $100 for a physical security key. But does this method have the same security as if you had a physical security key, or does it have acceptable or mediocre security? Bit of a long question. Pretty much about passkeys, I think, is where we're getting at. And uh, a lot of the times for a lot of services, those software passkeys and hardware keys are going to be interchangeable. They do work slightly differently. So sometimes you'll encounter accounts that don't work with software passkeys, for example, but do work with hardware keys. And sometimes, probably less commonly, you'll see the reverse, where they only work with software passkeys and not hardware keys. Apple is an example of the first case where if you want to have like hardware security keys securing your Apple ID, for example, you have to have a physical YubiKey. You can't use a passkey for that kind of thing, although they have their own proprietary sign-in with iOS passkey thing that they're doing. But we've talked about passkeys a few times. The software-based ones are basically like it's a convenience thing where they're meant to replace passwords overall, because at the end of the day, if everyone uses passkeys as their form of one-factor authentication, that's going to be much better than everyone using passcodes. But when it comes to like, it's not going to be as good as like two-factor authentication, for example. And if you have all of that stuff stored in software, that isn't going to be as secure, as opposed to like having one in physical form where that could never be copied by anyone, basically, unless, yeah, they'd have to have access to that key, and they can't clone it. So that's pretty much what it comes down to. It's like a lot of security things, in my opinion, where you're trading off security for convenience. And I think that both options are great, but there is a trade-off for sure. I don't know if you have
Right.
anything to add to that.
No, I think it ties into earlier we talked about passkeys and TOTP and whatnot, and I think this ties into how I'm debating switching away from my accounts that don't support YubiKeys. I'm debating pretty much the ones that have TOTP and have a password but support passkeys but not a security key. I'm debating moving those accounts to a passkey because of similar reasons that you shared there. But I'm still debating on if it's worth it, mainly because it's a lot more convenient. Because I think TOTP is actually the least convenient form of security. Because normally it's a different device, which it is for me. So like a mobile device has my TOTP codes, and then there's the password manager, and so I always have to have both devices. Whereas a security key is actually more convenient for me because I always have a YubiKey Nano plugged into my laptop. So I just reach over and tap it, and then I'm in. And it's actually more secure than the TOTP key. So I feel like the convenience and security trade-off by utilizing as a pass key would be kind of worth it. But I'm still playing with that. Yeah. All right. We have another regular here. A lot of regulars, actually. Hi, Henry and
Yeah.
Jonah. Purple Jump Privacy. My question is, I would like to have an offsite backup solution. What are some good end-to-end encrypted cloud services? They're considering Ente Photos for their photos, and they're looking into iCloud with advanced data protection, and they're trying to protect the data from bad actors, protect their photos from the general public, and some state governments in the US, especially around the health data. I guess I'll share right away that like my core offsite backup for a lot of my things is ultimately like my Synology NAS, which backs up to the cloud with end-to-end encrypted cloud storage. So that is like my ultimate offsite backup. But in terms of other options that you might be looking at, I do in some ways consider like Proton Drive, Ente Photos, iCloud with advanced data protection. Those are also kind of offsite backups as well, because they do live in the cloud. They're not on your computers. And so I think that all the options that you shared are pretty decent. Proton Drive, Ente Photos, iCloud with advanced data protection, they all give you end-to-end encryption. They all give you a place where you can securely store things. And I would say if you really want to maximize things and utilize an open source ecosystem that's not tied to the Apple ecosystem, Proton Drive plus Ente Photos is pretty good. And I think it depends what you really need, though, because Ente Photos is more of like a Google Photos replacement, whereas as of right now, Proton Drive does support Photos, but it's more of just like a massive SD card photo storage solution. So, but they do automatic backups now from your phone using Proton Drive, I think. I think that was the
On
feature they rolled out.
iOS.
I don't know about
Mm,
iOS. It's hard to know with Proton where they released it and when.
yeah.
But
I don't think it's available on my. Now I'm gonna check really quick while you're talking.
yeah, check for me because I know they released that maybe in beta or something. But either way, my point is, if you just need an offsite backup and you are down to like lose some metadata or lose like organization, you just want a copy of your photos, worst case scenario, you could just go all in on Proton Drive and skip NT Photos if your core goal is just offsite backups. But I think if you want to use NT Photos as your actual place to keep your photos, then that makes more sense because then it's more like a Google Photos or Apple Photos replacement rather than just being a backup. So those are my thoughts. But yeah, now I'm waiting to hear if it's supported in the Proton Drive app. I do not use the Proton Drive app.
No, I don't either because it doesn't have this feature, and I got logged out, so I had to just log in again. It doesn't have anything. I feel like I heard it was in beta, but I'm a visionary Proton user, and I haven't even been invited to the beta, and that was like months ago that I thought I heard that, and it still isn't out, so who knows if that's a thing, when that'll be a thing. I have
Someday.
no idea. Yeah.
Jonah's a visionary pro user, by the way. BTW.
Yeah, so they should send me an invite to this Proton Drive iOS beta. Come on.
Yeah.
I
Honestly,
totally
though.
agree with everything you said, though.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I'll leave it in your court to close it
Like,
out then.
I would just I'm a big proponent of, like you said, the Synology NAS solution or just self-hosting, that kind of thing. I left a reply to another forum post yesterday night with like a setup of how to have like a $300 to $400 NAS and like cloud backup solution that's end-to-end encrypted all in like one thing using Synology services. And that will get you like a pretty nice setup with 4 TB of local storage, that kind of thing, which if you're going to be using this NAS for like 5, 10 years, the per year price of that is actually like a lot lower than any of these cloud services are going to be. And you get the benefit of, having it all hosted yourself without having to deal with all these cloud services. But if you're looking for a cloud service solution, NT Photos is a great solution. And all the other options that you mentioned as well are perfectly acceptable.
Yeah. And the nice thing with the Synology solution is you have a lot more customizability, right? Like you can get the exact amount of hard drive space that you want that's tailored to your budget. You can change the quality of the drives that you purchase and the speed of them. I think you had an ultra budget version. I think I saw your post where you have like a less nice NAS with a kind of weak CPU, but it would still get the job done. And then also I think your suggestion is with Synology C2, which is definitely, I think, a
Yep,
little bit more expensive than some of the other cloud providers that offer similar features, but it's not as nicely integrated. Um, and so, yeah, like you just have a lot more flexibility and you're not tied to a random subscription cost increase if that ever happens with any of these services too. Um,
absolutely. Well, I will say that C2 is actually, if you're looking at the 300 GB or the 1 TB plan, it's actually a really compelling offer just for backups. When you start paying like per terabyte and go past 1 TB, it does get a little more expensive than some other alternatives. But um, for basic like home photo use, the person I was replying to didn't even need a terabyte, so it's a
oh,
perfect
wow.
solution in that case.
Wow. Yeah, I did use C2 for a while and I can definitely say it was a really good experience. Um, but it was expensive. That's why I moved away from it because I was using like 5, 6 TB with all our video storage that we have back here.
Yeah,
And
I
then
mean,
I was
I
like,
back up like 40 TB to the cloud,
yeah,
so
that's
I couldn't
crazy. I
use
don't know
it.
how you have 40 TB of data. Like my 5 to 6
I
terabytes
don't,
I'm
but
talking
that's
about.
all I could afford to back up.
Oh my gosh. That's
I have like
crazy.
80 TB.
But how? Like 5 to 6 TB for me includes like Techlore stuff. Like that's all the video files that we work on and the project files that go along with the videos and like Go Incognito and all these other crazy. I don't know how you have 80 terabytes. Like what are you doing?
It's getting expensive. Yeah, I just had to replace an 8 TB drive with a 16 TB drive because I was at like over 90% usage and it was giving me warning, so now I'm back to a cool 80% usage.
Oh, dude, nice. Good for you.
Yeah, I know. It's a pain.
That's so bad. All right, we have another regular underrate. And I did pull this up earlier what the explanation was. Essentially, um actually wait, no, I took the last one. Sorry, your turn. I have
Oh,
comments
my
about
turn.
this, but I started the last question, so.
Well, you can answer it. Underrated asks, what are our thoughts about Proton dropping features from their free VPN and making them paid features? So apparently they don't let you choose between free servers in different countries anymore. You just get a random free server when you connect.
Yeah,
I don't
that's what
know
it sounds like.
if you've looked into that. I actually don't have the free version installed. I'd have to sign out of my unlimited plan and sign into my other account to test it out.
Has Jonah mentioned he's a Visionary Pro user today?
Yeah, I'm a Visionary
Well,
user on Proton. Thank you very
it's
much.
time for me to insert my Proton status and say that I'm a business customer. And Jonah's kind of silly because like he could get access to so many things through our business account, but he just chooses instead to pay for his own Visionary Pro account.
Oh, I guess I am a business user via Techlore.
Oh, yeah. I do like the business plan. Overall, it's pretty nice. But I guess while you're looking that up, um,
I can't pull it up easily right now, so
okay,
I'll have to
yeah,
look later.
yeah. I did use Proton Free for a while, and I think this would have irritated me, but I think this is them just trying to make sure. Because what I noticed when I used a free plan is there would always be like a couple servers that had less server load than the other ones, so it was a tiny bit faster and a little bit more usable.
Mhm.
My guess is that like that got in the way of them properly being able to, I guess, keep users in the correct locations. So I don't know, keep them in the correct locations, not have a single server be too overloaded, and then just have people move away from it. So I don't know, maybe they're just trying to automatically do that for people. But yeah, it's definitely restrictive, and I can see why it's annoying. But also, it's like a free VPN, so yeah, I guess
Yeah.
that comes along with the use case. It sucks though.
Yeah, I can't really think of like a good justification to complain about a free VPN like that when like the other viable alternatives are all paid only. Like there's no Mullvad or IVPN free plan. So it's a service that they offer like if you absolutely need it, but it's not going to be as convenient as paying for it, which is the case with most free plans, I think.
Yeah, yeah, and I can see how if you're used to that experience and now they like it feels like they restricted you a little bit more. I can see why that sucks. But yeah, at the end of the day, there's really no other legitimate free plan. Windscribe has a free plan, but it's limited to 10 gigabytes of bandwidth. I think with a couple caveats of like verifying your email and doing a couple things. Last I checked, and so 10 gigabytes it just isn't very much bandwidth, especially if you're using it like at home on a computer. You know, that's what like a 0.01% of your 80 terabytes. What if you need to do a
Yeah,
backup? Like,
I know.
um, but yeah, I mean, those are my thoughts. I don't use it, so I'm not personally affected, but I can see why it's frustrating. So,
hmm
um, Bruce, Bruce has a question. Is it a bad idea to install an extension in Mullvad Browser? Mullvad Browser is Mullvad's the VPN. They released a browser. It's supposed to be anti-fingerprinting by pretty much blending users to look the same. So pretty much their question is, if they install an extension, what are the implications of that? And they know that Mullvad recommends against it, and it increases the potential for fingerprinting, but they want to install the simple login extension. And then what do you guys do on desktop to get simple login aliases? Just have the extension in another browser like Firefox, or do you just log into the website in Mullvad Browser? Okay, yeah, that's a great question. So on my end, I'll just share what I do first. I have simple login in a different browser. I actually use Brave personally for that browser and that use case. And that's a way for me to keep my Mullvad browser clean. I actually use Mullvad browser exactly as they intend it, and I alluded to this in my VPN versus DNS video I just put out, which is you can still set a custom DNS provider within Mullvad. In fact, that's the default. The default in the Mullvad browser is the Mullvad DNS provider. So even if you're using something like NextDNS or Control D or a custom DNS provider outside of the Mullvad browser, you're still going to use the Mullvad DNS inside Mullvad browser. And if you're using Mullvad VPN, which I do, then you're blending in with other Mullvad users. And I don't install extensions and I don't touch settings in Mullvad browser. So I actually use Mullvad browser as it's intended, and I would recommend that as well, mainly because I don't see, I guess, personally, I would look at the Mullvad browser as, again, an anti-fingerprint resistance browser, so I wouldn't be personally logging into personal accounts in the Mullvad browser, because those are inherently like personal, unique to you accounts. And so those are, Mullvad browser for me is more just a general purpose browser. And I guess that general purpose could come along with a random simple login alias that isn't tied to you. But in that situation, I would just have a different browser which I do sometimes. Like if I'm ordering something online with a totally random name and everything, I'll just have a different browser like Simple Login with Simple Login installed there, and I just copy and paste it. It's not as efficient, it's not as convenient. But also, another pro tip to share is I forgot what they call it, but you can essentially generate Simple Login aliases on the fly. It's a setting that you can enable in your Simple Login account. So what you can do is you can essentially be able to generate a Simple Login alias inside the Mullvad browser by just typing in a certain alias, and it'll generate for you on the fly without you needing the extension or to open a different browser. But I forgot what that feature's called. You probably know what that's called.
They have a couple different ways to do that. I think it's called like directory, where you can do it where like you do something slash anything you want at simplelogin.com.
Yeah, I think it's, yeah.
The only danger with that is like you could potentially be correlated between your identities based on the first part if people are like looking out for that specific behavior from Simple Login. Because there's a unique identifier in all of your aliases when you go that route, but
Right.
it's still an option for you.
Yeah.
I agree, though. I do a separate browser for that kind of thing, but I also don't usually log into things with Mullvad Browser at all.
Same. But I guess just to play devil's advocate, I think you're fine if you install Simple Login extension in Mullvad Browser. I'm not going to suggest it or recommend it, but it's not going to make or break anything for you, I don't think. Unless like your
Yeah,
threat model is dire and requires you to completely blend in with other people, which again in that situation, you should probably be using Tor browser. So,
right. I don't think that like a lot of scripts out there are looking at like whether you have Simple Login installed, for example. It definitely is something that could theoretically be detected, especially because by default, Simple Login adds that little like button that you can click to autofill in the email, and anytime you have an extension that modifies the page, that can be detected by scripts running on the page. If you disable that feature, maybe it would be less detectable, but I don't know how the Simple Login extension works to like say for sure one way or the other whether it can be detected if that feature is off. So if you're really worried about somebody knowing that you have the Simple Login extension installed, then you probably shouldn't install it. But if for most people, like you said, it's probably not a huge deal to just have that installed.
right. But again, we're not going to formally recommend it because neither does Mullvad. So,
Yeah. Hmm.
all right. Next one in your court.
Let's see, where are we at? At Corsa
Corsa.
asked,
Yeah.
when erasing your digital footprint, what can be done with websites or services that had shut down and can no longer be accessed? I usually check if there's some information on Wayback Machine, but many times there isn't. Perhaps since it closed down, there's no need to worry about data breaches and such. Ultimately, my main concern is what have they done to the data? Did they clear the database? Did they sell your personal information, etc.? Um, yeah, I mean, if the service has disappeared, it's very tricky to know what exactly happened to all that. It could all have been deleted. It could be stored in some backup somewhere that like former employees of that service had or whatever. Yeah, you really have no way of knowing what's going on behind the scenes, especially if you can't get in touch with these people. That's just the unfortunate reality of it. It's probably not like a big deal, especially compared to like all of the services that probably have your information and are still live publishing it on the internet right now. But that's just it is what it is when it comes to things like that, I think. I don't know if you have anything else to add. Different
No,
opinion.
no, I think I'm with you. Like, it is what it is. And I think there has to be a layer of acceptance that we have on the digital rights journey because there are going to be some things out of your control. You're not going to have as much control as you think you do. You can't control if a service of yours has a data breach. All you can do is try to mitigate the damage when it happens, and also like prepare, right? Like you can prepare and do things in advance. And that's why we suggest using alias information in the first place, using unique passwords, just being careful what you upload in the first place so that even if a service disappears and doesn't delete your data and just leaks it 5 years later, it's not a huge deal. And so that's where all that preparation really comes in. And also, while Jonah was talking, I was thinking of, I, for some reason, come up with lots of health analogies on these live streams. And what I think of is there's probably, a million different things that you're going to read about how you can maximize and optimize your health. And the new thing is ice cold plunges. And it's like, you don't have to do anything nowadays. You can eat whatever you want. You can sleep whenever you want. Just do an ice cold plunge and you'll be great, man. And I feel like I think a lot of the research on this is really finicky and kind of silly with the ice cold plunges. But even if we assume that, let's say it's gonna improve your life by 2 to 5%, it's a very minor thing at the end of the day. And where I'm going with this is it's something it's dealing with things that can be kind of okay. I guess it's not a good example because where I was going with this is there are things that are health related that you can't really control that are easier to just let go and just not stress about it and actually care about things that you can control. And this is one of those situations where like you can't do anything about this. All you can do is just mitigate any damage that can be done, and you just got to move on with your day. Kind of like how you're going to be thrown a million different types of health advice. Many of them are probably out of your control. I guess I just wanted to rant about ice cold plunges because they had nothing to do with this analogy, but like there are a ton of things that are just out of your control. You can't control like what the UV index is going to be today, but you can still put on sunscreen. It's probably the best analogy I have for this. So um yeah,
Hmm.
I don't know if that made any sense, but
I think you're good.
yeah, I think I'm good. Next question is from a username for Techlore. Really, really awesome username. Is LineageOS with GApps better for privacy than using the stock phone software? I'm not sure if I'm ready to completely de-Google on my OnePlus 6T daily driver, which has been at end of life for a while now. Okay, I have a few thoughts. I haven't read this question yet, so I'm going to do my best here. So, first off, I will say that I think the biggest privacy concern on a stock Android device actually does tend to revolve around Google Play services, which GApps is completely Google Play services. You do have a bit of flexibility with GApps because you can control the package that you install, so you can actually get very bare bones just what you need to install applications from the Google Play Store. And in that regard, you might get a little bit better privacy because you won't have as many Google services on your device. But I wouldn't really count on that to be significantly better, if at all. And so with that said, I still do think that LineageOS has some benefits, which is if your phone is end of life and not receiving security updates from Google anymore, you can at least get security updates on the software for your phone through LineageOS. Not firmware, but software. So that's one incentive. And I would also say you do have options like MicroG, which are kind of a middle ground. So LineageOS with MicroG, which is an open source implementation of Google Play services, which you could argue is not fully de-Googled, but could still enable you to use Google services pretty nicely. So that's what I would be looking at. Just keep in mind if you use LineageOS, you are going to be sacrificing verified boot. And that's those are all my observations. Um, but I'd like to hear your thoughts too.
Absolutely. Yeah, I really think
Oh,
that like if you're
sorry.
flashing Google Apps,
And just to interrupt,
what's
I
up?
guess I just read that they did say that their phone has been end of life for a while now. So I didn't
Right.
see that context. Sorry.
Yeah, Lineage OS can definitely be used in like a privacy respecting way, but when you flash Google Apps like that, it's doing a full install like to the system of Google Apps, which means it's going to have all of the exact same integrations that it has on stock Android. So if you're concerned about like de-Googling, that isn't really a viable option. MicroG is certainly an option. If I were you, I would definitely look into DivestOS, which we have talked about in different streams and on the forum before. They have support for the OnePlus 6T, the latest version of DivestOS, so you'll get like the latest version of Android through that. And DivestOS takes a different approach to installing MicroG, where instead of installing it on the system directly, it's going to be sandbox, so you can install it to like a single user profile, for example, and kind of like limit which apps even have access to MicroG and have a completely separate um, profile or whatever for any apps that you don't want to have access to Google at all, that you get from F-Droid or whatever. So that's probably the best option for you that I would explore before trying to go the Lineage OS route,
Yeah, that's
if
pretty
your
good.
device is compatible.
That's cool. I didn't know that's
Yeah,
exactly how Divest implemented MicroG, but that's really awesome. And I think that's kind of the perfect middle ground to still, if you have like 5 Google services you still use and you're in the process of de-Googling, you can just keep those 5 services in a totally different profile, which you can even, I assume, just shut off entirely when you're done at the end of the day. And those apps are kind of just paused, and then you have your normal thing. That's cool.
yeah.
Also,
That
um,
Sandbox MicroG, I think it's a relatively new feature, but um, they announced it on the Privacy Guides forum like late last year, and it's super cool setup.
nice, super cool. Also, shout out to Divest because they hit their fundraiser goal. For people
Yeah.
who didn't catch that. So he was trying to get $12,000 and they got it. And also that's actually why, because we did a whole little like a mini campaign on our forum. You're gonna see here Rolls Ice Cream has a DivestOS supporter thing. We pretty much said like we donated $250 to it, and then we left a little forum thread, and we pretty much said if you contribute like $5 or more, I think it was $5 or $10. If you like leave a receipt here on this thread, a blacked out receipt, then we'll give everyone a little limited edition badge, and that was pretty successful. And so like Jonah and I still need to talk about possibly doing that with like future services, like maybe be a monthly event or something where we grant limited badges on our forum as a way to like incentivize people to contribute to services. So yeah, we're exploring
Yeah.
that because I think it'd be cool.
Contributing to the services you use. It's super cool. You all should do it.
Yeah. And for people who saw it, like I became a Signal donator again. Um, After they released usernames as like my way to give back because everyone's complaining. And also, dude, someone left a really good comment, by the way, about the Signal username situation, and it was gold. So if you're watching this, like, thank you for leaving this comment because it's not a point that I thought to bring up because there are so many people for the last like 5 years who are saying I would contribute to Signal, I would donate to Signal, I would do anything for Signal if they just released usernames. And so this commenter left a comment that said, because we just made a video about Signal usernames, they left a comment saying, now the $100,000 question is if all the people saying that they'd contribute to Signal after they release usernames are actually going to cough up the money and like throw the support at Signal that they said they would. And I think it's a great point because I think almost all of those people will not. Because I think it's really easy
Maybe.
to like say I would do something if they did X, and then when they actually do it, you just kind of move on with your day. So yeah, if you're somebody who's been demanding Signal usernames for a long time, literally just throw like $5. I know everyone has different financial situations, but if you have $5 to throw Signal's way, and they see a huge uptick this month, just because like 100 people gave them $5, if they see a big uptick for the month because of that, then they can be like, wow, we released a cool feature that people liked. Look at us go. And that shows them that like we actually do respect what they do and we like them doing things that the community asks for. Period.
Absolutely. Yeah, I didn't talk to you about, I didn't notice that you were donating and I didn't see the badge. But I also did the exact same thing where this month I restarted my subscription. I hadn't subscribed to Donate to Signal for over a year now because I really felt like they were really stringing us along for a long time with the username thing. But now that it's out, I definitely started that personally. So I hope everyone else does too. But
Nice. Oh, I didn't see your badge. So cool stuff.
yeah, I'm on board. We're not noticing.
Yeah. Yeah. I just try to tune you out in Signal, honestly. Um,
I can tell.
well, that's it for the forum, and let's go through. We're moving pretty quickly. We're under an hour, and we're through all the questions. Look at us go! All right,
Dang.
now we can go through the live stream comments, and as always, it's kind of a free for all. So anyone in the live stream, go ahead and start leaving some of your comments. We'll prioritize any super chats, which we would super appreciate, as a way to like contribute to what we're doing back here. Otherwise, we're just gonna kind of pick and choose any comments or questions that like speak to either of us.
Yeah. Another passkey question from Radius704. Can you use a passkey with a security key like Google Passkey for an account and YubiKey with 2FA? Nothing technically would prevent websites from doing that, but I haven't seen a single website which supports passkeys and 2FA at the moment, which is kind of annoying, but it is what it is.
Yeah. I would just like to see better support from websites for this so that I can make a decision on what to do. I
Yeah,
feel like what's really preventing me from making a decision regarding passkeys, security keys, is just that it's so inconsistent across the services I use, and I can't really go in on one solution. So,
I think it'll definitely like get pretty wide adoption. It's just going to take a long time. But I could totally see it being a situation like HTTPS, for example, where eventually like browser creators or operating system developers like start blacklisting any other forms of authentication besides passkeys just to push adoption. But that's like years and years down the road.
yeah, I guess it's hard for me to envision that because I feel like we've had great 2FA options now for probably around almost a decade, and a lot of services still don't use them.
Yeah.
Like it's still pretty common to register for a random service online and they just don't have MFA in any capacity. And so I guess that's where I'm coming at this a little bit more critically, but I do think you're right because this passkey thing is a lot more integrated into browsers and operating systems, unlike TOTP. And so I feel like it is possible and easy for them to start like requiring that from websites. So I'm hoping you're right.
Yeah, we'll see.
Corsa, who I think is also on the forum, asked, "Does Bitwarden notify about data breaches?" And I think they do, but I don't use Bitwarden and I'm not as experienced with it. But I can quickly check here. But like that's not something I've like. Bitwarden says they don't. At least in the community forum, it says does not offer automation of the reports, but if you want automatic notification of breaches that you've appeared in, you can sign up for that service at Have I Been Pwned. So it seems like
Yeah,
the answer is no.
that'd be nice if they added that.
Yeah, but that was 2 years ago, so I don't know if that feature's been rolled out since. You know, it'd be kind of cool. Kind of
Mm.
inspired by because I was trying out different text-based editors, like VS Code and what is it, Zedge? Was that the one?
I don't remember.
Some Mac OS one, and then I was also Sublime. And VS Code has the whole extensions workflow where I think it relies a lot on third-party extensions to be able to integrate features and stuff like that. It'd be kind of cool to see a
Hmm.
password manager integrate that in a way that wasn't gonna like jeopardize everybody's security. Because it would be cool to see something like a Have I Been Pwned extension for Bitwarden, or like if Simple Login and all these other, if all of these things were integrated into a password manager. But I can easily see where this is going to go downhill super quickly from an attack surface perspective, and how they don't even want to go there.
Yeah,
Um, it's
yeah,
just a
that'd be
thought.
hard to pull off well, but
It would.
it's
I
interesting.
Yeah, just an idealistic scenario where like let's say there wasn't malicious intent. It would just be cool to see something similar where people could like add new features to password managers very easily. That integrates into
Yeah.
different services that they use. But
Oh, we're getting some more. Got another form question actually from Turbo Wolf, but it's a super easy one. Should you use a password manager or not? Yes, you should use a password manager. That is a great question. And if you want to know what password manager, you should look at the resources page on techlore.tech. Actually, I think if you're on the forum, in the sidebar at the top left, there's a resources link where you can go to the resources page super easily, and
there
there's password manager
sure.
recommendations there.
I'm showing it right now on the screen. So there you go. Um,
Yeah, just click that.
yeah, there's some good options there. I see a question here. Um, I managed to get a really cool Signal username, but the app tells me to be restricted with sharing it. What are the actual concerns about sharing my username willy-nilly? Spam? Um, it yeah, on my end that's my concern, and I think that's where people really got the whole Signal thing mixed up. Including myself, for the record. In my head, for some reason, when I heard about Signal releasing usernames someday, I'm going, wow, that's cool. I can finally put my Signal username on my website. Because in my head, the reason why it's not on my website is because I'd have to share a phone number. But that's actually not at
Mhm.
all the issue because then I'm back. Like people can just spam me anyway, and I don't want to deal with spam, and I kind of want to hide like other services that I use anyway from my website. But it's hard to be able to verify who I am and publicize what my accounts are, and also not deal with spam issues. And so Signal's never going to deal with that. So yeah, if you publish your username all over the place, you're still going to deal with the issues of spam. The phone number, not publicizing your phone number has nothing to do with that. And I'm guessing that's why they suggest that. Um, can you think of another reason why they wouldn't suggest just willy nilly sharing your username?
Spam is definitely the main reason. I will say there's another theoretical privacy problem where if you have the who can see my number set to nobody, but you have who can find me by number set to everybody, there is still a way to maybe figure out what your phone number is, even if like it being on your profile is disabled, because the public key for the account with your phone number and the public key for the account with your username is going to be exactly the same. So if everybody went and like scraped the public key of every single phone number on Signal, which is possible because there aren't that many phone numbers in the world, they could potentially correlate that. So unless you have both phone number settings set to nobody, Sharing your Signal username could actually expose your phone number technically. And Signal might have like server side rate limiting to prevent that kind of thing, but it's just something to possibly be concerned about if that's really concerning for you. That's the only other reason why sharing your username might not be a good idea, but I think it's mainly the spam thing. And really, it just works very differently from all other messaging platforms that have usernames because with Signal, you are pretty much supposed to just use them like one time. You can quick share a username with someone and then you can disable that username after you've made whatever connection you want. And when you change your username or you delete your username, people can still contact you if they've already contacted you once. So they're really meant to be disposable and not really things that are shared publicly. And I don't think many people will share them publicly except for the people who are already sharing their Signal phone number publicly, like journalists, for example. I see a
Journalists.
lot of Signal tip lines, and that's going to be replaced with usernames. But other than that, I think for most people, it makes sense to just have like single use usernames and not bother with having a single username to keep track of.
Yeah, that makes sense. I didn't even think about it being more disposable like that, but that's a really good use case. Because then,
Hmm.
like, you could, like, in theory, if we went to a conference and I had a talk or something, I could just be like, hey, message me on Signal at this username. And then everyone at the conference could, like, add me if they wanted to. And then,
Yep.
like, an hour later, I just delete the username and then generate a new one. And now you can't add me anymore. Tough luck,
Yeah.
you know? So that's really cool. That's a really good use case, actually. But then you lose, like, a cool username. But then what's the point of having, like, a username that's unique to you, I guess? Because it's not, I
Well,
think,
yeah. Well,
yeah,
that's the reason that usernames aren't like in your profile, or you'll never see your username again once you add that connection. Like, if I
right.
add you on Signal, I'll never see your at whatever username again. It's just for the initial connection and nothing else.
Right. I think where people get mixed up, because Nate and I talked about this in the Q&A, and Nate was like, well, now people can impersonate me. Um, but Signal just doesn't have that use case in the first place of it being like a public facing account. I feel like Signal is
Yeah.
designed to be like more one on one. It's not designed to be this is a Twitter account and we need to verify this is actually the actual Twitter user. Um, so it's designed more to be just a messenger for individuals and people you know. And in that case, then you have a way to already communicate with them securely, ideally, like either in person or you have another means of communication that you can verify it's the actual person. So,
Yeah. The only way to verify in Signal is to do the like QR codes, safety number verification thing. Like they're not going to add
yep,
additional ways like a special username that only you have or anything like that. That's not part of their setup.
yeah, which I recommend people do, and I do that with essentially all my contacts at this point. Like everyone's verified on Signal. So,
Hmm.
let's see. Someone mentioned that Mercedes includes TikTok in their cars, apparently. Apparently.
Crazy. Mike Rack asks, how would you recommend setting up an offsite backup device? Um, a
What
fully
is
encrypted Linux box at a friend's house, that seems like a good option. I feel like a lot of those things where reboots would be an issue, you can usually remotely connect and reboot, no problem. There's there's plenty of solutions. I keep bringing up Synology, not because like they're the only solution, but because I just personally like them a lot. But they make the kind of devices where they don't have like a lot of fancy features like a Linux install would have, or like TrueNAS or something, but like the features that Synology has are ones that they have made to work like extra reliably. And so a lot of people like have these Synology boxes running at offsite locations and they have like years of uptime because they rarely need any maintenance at all. And if you do like an update, everything just works when it reboots. Very rare to have any kind of problems with reliability whatsoever. So that's an option.
Yeah, I've been really enjoying mine. And like that really is like independent of like what the two videos where well the first video was a review and I made it very clear to them that like hey like yeah you can send us a review unit but it's going to be a pretty honest review which it was and there were still some things I'm very critical about Synology for. I still think it's kind of silly for them not to open source some of their stuff given I think the target audience and given um just the general philosophy of the company, you would think that like, oh, this being self-hosted and being yours, you would think it would be open source. So that's like definitely my biggest criticism of Synology's things. And also I talked about some of like the speed issues with Quick Connect and other kind of things that you need to consider before using a Synology NAS, and how it's probably still not for everybody. Because I think despite them making it easier for people, it's still probably not going to be something I suggest to like a family member unless I'm the one who's going to be managing it, you know, because they're not going to deal with it. And so I think that there are still limitations to something like Synology. But despite that, I can also just say that, like, for my use case, it's been just fantastic for my workflow. So, but I also haven't used any other NAS. So maybe there is a better NAS out there, but I just haven't used it myself. But I also don't know why I would try one because I've just had such a good experience with Synology. Have you tried other NASs?
Um, I used TrueNAS for a bit. No other like pre-built NAS solutions, like Synology. Just like some Linux setups for hosting files. There aren't a lot of like really big name options out there besides Synology and QNAP. A couple like random companies like WD make some. Actually, I did have a WD MyCloud device for a while, but it was terrible. And they really don't they generally don't work well. And QNAP is like famous for having a lot of security issues.
We've talked
You
about
could just look
this.
up like QNAP security vulnerabilities. I think we've talked about that before, where like it's like every other week you hear about a new QNAP vulnerability in some of their software, and it's like, after reading 20 different stories about QNAP vulnerabilities, it's like I'm just not gonna bother trying it. I don't really care if it has like amazing features at this point. I'm just gonna stick with the one where that doesn't happen, maybe.
That's really funny. Yeah, I
Yeah.
remember. I don't know if we clipped that for Techler clips or not, but I do just like very thoroughly in my mind remember us talking about QNAP, um, which I haven't tried, and so maybe the features are really cool. It does support WireGuard, which is something else Synology does not support yet, which is
Uh,
really infuriating, actually. Um,
QNAP has more than a few features that I really want in a NAS, and I want Synology to copy. WireGuard is one of them. They have like a cloud mount where you can do like Synology has a similar feature with hybrid share, but it only works with C2, whereas with QNAP you can do it with basically any cloud provider, or you can do it with another NAS, which is actually what I want. I want to be able to, with my Synology NAS, I have an 8-bay NAS and I have a 2-bay NAS at a different location. I want to use that 2-bay NAS for like caching all the stuff that I have on my giant NAS elsewhere, but they don't let me do that for whatever reason, even though
just migrate to
they've built
QNAP.
they've built the feature for I'm not going to use QNAP and I'm not going to use Synology C2 because I can't afford to put 80 terabytes of data in Synology C2. Okay, I'm not going to use your cloud service. I bought this NAS for a reason. And QNAP supports ZFS, whereas Synology only supports ButterFS, which is a really nerd thing, but I would rather use ZFS personally, and I can't do it. But at the same time, I still like Synology so much more than QNAP that none of those features are going to make me switch. So,
Fair.
yeah.
Um, I got a comment here from Tim, and I think I know what they're referring to, but they say, does LastPass work better? I've been using Bitwarden and it never recognizes when I need a password filled in on a website. It's all like I'm filling in gaps here, but I feel like Tim's referring to Android because we talked about this a lot, which is autofill on Android is kind of nonsense. Um, because there's, like we've talked about, I think there's 3 different accessibility methods of utilizing autofill on Android, and some apps use all 3, some don't use all 3, and again, 3 is just in my head how many there are. It could be arbitrary. I don't remember. You might know the exact number, but it also depends on the browser and how browsers integrate autofill with third-party password managers, and it's just kind of a mixed bag. It depends on your OS, I guess. It depends on your browser. It depends on your password manager, and it's kind of finicky. If that's what you're complaining about, I don't know if LastPass works better for autofill than Bitwarden. I've heard people complain about Bitwarden in third-party browsers, but it's just such a mixed bag. I could never when I use Android with password storage, which I don't currently do right now because I don't store my password manager on my Android device at the moment. I had to manually copy and paste every time from my database. I just didn't even bother with autofill because it was so ridiculous. At least with my KeyPass client that I was trying to use. So I don't know if you have a different experience.
I'll just say I've not had a good experience ever with LastPass.
Okay, good to know.
LastPass is in a real like QNAP section of my mind where these are companies that I
But
just wouldn't touch with a
but
10-foot pole.
but kind of worse because I think we've talked about how the usability and the features of LastPass aren't even any more compelling than the other options. There's actually like if I'm trying to put myself in a position where I was trying to sell LastPass and I was like a super honest salesman, I don't know what I could actually sell as a feature to LastPass that wouldn't make me like a liar because I feel like the interface isn't better. I feel like the features aren't better. Obviously, its revenue model is significantly worse because it has this super weird free plan now where you can either use it on laptop or slash desktop or mobile. You can't use it on both, which is intentionally meant to make people upgrade. It's super expensive for what it is, and they now have several data breaches. And the way they dealt with the data breaches also wasn't good either. And it's not open source. And they lock you into their ecosystem and make it hard to leave. So if you're still in LastPass now, you're fine. It's still good that you're using a password manager, and I'm happy you're doing that. But I would really be looking at Bitwarden or something else because I'm trying to like justify in any situation where LastPass is good. Unlike QNAP, where we can at least say it has some neat features. I can't name a single like unique feature to LastPass that is actually cool and useful for people. But
Yeah. Switching back to the forum for a second, we got another question from R. They asked how privacy respecting are devices that we bring into our LAN network. Like, are you concerned your smart TV is snooping your network, checking to see if your smartphone disconnects or connects, or sees what other devices are on your network? You might have a better answer for this. My answer is pretty simple, which is that since I moved about a year ago and set up my LAN again from scratch, I don't connect any devices, like smart devices or anything. Literally, the only things on my LAN are like my laptop and phone and tablet. And I just won't connect anything else because I'm not going to deal with smart nonsense in all of my appliances. And I also go out of my way to buy things that don't have computers in them. So um I don't buy like smart TVs. I don't buy smart fridges. I don't know. I don't know if people are connecting to their things. I don't
smart
have smart light
toasters.
bulbs. I'm not into it. And maybe in the future I'll do like a self-hosted home assistant setup, but for now I'm totally fine just opening my fridge and using my eyes to look at what I have and using my light switch to turn my lights on and off. It hasn't been a big problem for me, and I've been pretty happy with this less tech-infused lifestyle personally.
Okay, but hot
Um,
take, it can get pretty exhausting having to close your blinds and opening them. So I don't know if you've considered like smart blinds or smart windows. I've seen those, but
honestly, unironically, that is kind of compelling because I would like not even just like opening and closing it. That doesn't bother me, but like waking up in the morning, it'd be nice if like it opened automatically before I woke up to like let the sun in to wake me up. I could use that. There's some automation stuff that might be cool for like an alarm when I'm not awake, and it maybe I'll do a home assistant setup in the future with just smart blinds. But for the most part, if I'm awake and conscious, I feel like I can usually just get up and switch a
right,
light on, open a blind.
right. And I still want to get to the question at some point, but just to continue on this
Yeah.
tangent, I am with you in that I really don't like smart devices. The one thing lately, because I have two pets, I have been very tempted to get one of those vacuum cleaners. But none of them are good enough for my standards for security and privacy. None of them. I haven't found one that I go, wow, I feel comfortable connecting this to a network, or maybe it's not even connected to a network at all, and I'm comfortable with like what this is doing. And so actually for me, what I've been considering lately, and it's kind of what you alluded to, is I've been wanting to do a very DIY thing where like what would it be like, because I know there's a lot of Raspberry Pi projects for a lot of these things, and so it would be fun for me to kind of dive into more of like building my own security camera situation. And the cool thing is, I think the Synology NAS is a great little hub for all of these things. Like the Synology NAS would be great for security cameras. It'd be great as just a central hub to be able to connect to different things. And so that's kind of what's been going on through my head, is maybe doing a DIY home setup where I have a few smart things that actually benefit me and aren't just BS, that are designed to make people buy it thinking they need it when they really don't, and they never even use half the features anyway. So I've been playing around with that idea, but it sounds like a lot of work. I'm pretty busy, and maybe it's more of a summer project where I'm like just, bored and want to do something. Um,
Yeah.
so yeah, but to get to the actual question, um, I would not connect these devices, at least on the same kind, like at least on the same LAN as my other devices. So if you want to set up like a VLAN or something, there are still ways to technically bypass a VLAN, and it's not foolproof. But I would at least try to compartmentalize your network a little bit if you have that capability, or you could set up a different. Like I would just try to compartmentalize things if you can, but I would do what Jonah does, which is just don't buy smart things in the first place if possible. And if you do, try not to connect them to the internet. And if you do have to connect them to the internet, at least try to like integrate some kind of compartmentalization on your network to some capacity to separate things a little bit. Um,
Yeah.
that's all I would
Something
suggest.
something else that I'll just add really quick is that we do know that these smart devices are like a big vector as far as like data collection and marketing goes. Walmart, I believe, just this week or last week, something
Vizio.
like that, just bought
Yeah.
Vizio. Because Vizio has like so much data. I think that was like a key part of that purchase was that Vizio was like, we have so much user data on like the people who use their smart TV stuff in their networks, and that was a big reason that Walmart went through with that purchase. So these smart TV companies are definitely they're definitely out to get your data. It seems to be a very similar situation to like cars, like in Mozilla's report. It's not good.
Right, and I think it was really eye-opening to me that Walmart chose Vizio of all companies, because for those who remember, back in 2021, Vizio was found to make more money spying on people who buy TVs than it does on the TVs themselves. So literally, Vizio's business model is to essentially lose money on selling a TV because it is assuming it's going to make its money back on spying on you later. And it does these. We talked about this because here at Techler we have a "Why I Hate Smart TVs" video. It's one of our random, like not really directly tied to privacy and security, but really talks about it, kind of video. And I talk about this like in the kind of privacy things that these TVs do, which on the surface don't seem like a big deal, but they're actually really scary when you start diving into it. But yeah, I don't think it's a coincidence that Walmart of all companies decided to buy Vizio. Um, so yeah, it's concerning, is definitely what I'll say.
Yeah. And it's annoying. I
It is annoying.
Vizio is one of those companies that bothers me a lot because I think like maybe 10 years ago they used to be somewhat good. Like in terms of their quality products and that kind of thing. They were like usually you'd go online and look for TV reviews and they'd be like Vizio is the best option because they're making like these flagship TVs, but they're making them a lot cheaper than everyone else and you can get them for good prices at Costco or whatever. And at the time I mean, I had a Vizio TV in like 2014, 15, and that TV like still works perfectly fine. But my parents just got a Vizio TV a few years ago, like 2021 or something, and it's already like failing, and the software on it is terrible to use, and it's just a complete disaster. And it's a really there just seems to be a trend with these new electronics companies. We've seen this with phones before as well, where these companies come out of the gate with like these really high quality products to try and get a lot of people on board, and then they slowly over time like make worse and worse products and add more and more tracking to their products and that kind of thing. And it's just a disaster. They're trying to capitalize on like this brand that they've built basically, and it's not it makes me suspicious of like all the new companies out there. Like, okay, you're making a good product now. 10 years from now, what is your product gonna look like? It's
Right.
usually not great.
Right. It's really sad because it makes me lose faith in any new products at all. And
Right.
this is what I talk like we've talked about this too, and it's what actually really irritates me about Instagram threads, because especially when it comes from the same company, like wake the fuck up, people. Like Facebook does the same thing with all of its products, which is they release a new product, it's super good, super like super well done, it's super clean, and you know what people say? Like I remember when Instagram was like very early on in its days and people went, wow, Instagram is like the more clean version of Facebook. Like it's just there's very few ads, if any, and it's so positive there because everyone's on Facebook already and Facebook's already been made to be garbage. And then what happens with Instagram over time? Facebook goes, well, we can make a lot more money out of this. Everyone's already on this. Everyone's invested into the platform. Let's slowly make it shit. So that's what they do. Then they do that with every other product that they release. And people just don't figure it out. It's like people, like, because I see this with Instagram threads, people, as of even recent, there's still no ads. I don't think it has ads still to this day.
I don't
Fact
think
check
so.
me.
Yeah.
But no ads. Moderation is pretty good so far because it's a smaller platform. There are still, I think they might be rolling out an algorithm as of right now, but as of like a month ago, I don't think there were any algorithms in threads. It was all just a timeline. And that's literally how it all started. Instagram started as a timeline. Then they start rolling out an algorithm that is designed to keep you on the platform as long as possible. Then they roll out ads. And then it's just a garbage platform again. And they're doing this with threads as well. Everyone's on threads. They're starting to get their user count up. And what's going to happen? They're going to roll out an algorithm to keep you on it as long as possible. Then they're going to roll out ads and they're going to profit off of you and capitalize on the platform. And then in 5 years, threads is going to be nonsense like all the other Facebook platforms. But people still fall for it every time. And it's so frustrating to watch because like it's just it really infuriates me is all because they're not the only companies
Yeah.
that do this. I think Facebook is just a very easy example, but other services do this as well, where they really like hook people in with a really cool service, and then it slowly becomes crap over time. Um, and my last thing to say to this before I'm done is this is why people need to vote with their freaking wallets. We don't do it enough. Netflix does this. Netflix does this crap. All the other video streaming platforms do this as well. They really incentivize you with low subscription costs, and they get you in. You're hooked. It's part of your lifestyle, and then they start making it worse over time and trying to make as much money as they can. And what do people do? They just stay in it and they pay more and they don't really care. And it's like, no, you have to actually leave these platforms and vote with your wallet if you actually want them to stop doing this kind of nonsense. So I
Mhm.
feel like people in my life think that I'm very firm in my ways when it comes to this kind of thing with subscription services and the services I sign up for. But I think if more people did that, we wouldn't see all these issues. Rant
Yeah,
over.
absolutely.
That's a good Techlore clip right there. Let's see.
How do you tell which privacy blogs, etc., are reliable and which are just paranoid? There's a lot of green text on black background, elite hacker anonymous sites out there. Philip
Oh, I see
Johansson
it.
asked. Um, I, to me, the biggest red flag is you'll go to some of these sites and they'll have a whole like page or section dedicated to calling out every other site on the internet. And if you're if you encounter that kind of thing, that's the biggest red flag to me. If everybody is their enemy and they're the only people in their eyes who are telling you the truth about privacy, they're probably not giving good advice. That's probably my biggest tip.
Right. And I think the best services, well, the best resources, I should say, will also link or at least recommend you check out other sources as well. This is why, like on the techlore.tech resources page, on the bottom, there are external resources for organizations we have nothing to do with. And that's a way to be like, hey, these are other organizations. They have different opinions, and they have different ways of doing things. I don't agree with everything Jonah does at Privacy Guides, which I tell him very bluntly quite a bit. But I still link to his website. And same thing with Nate. I disagree with some of the stuff in the new oil, but I still link to Nate's website. And there are other services on the techlore.tech resources page for that reason. And then the one thing I'll add to what you said is look at how arguments are made and if they're made from a perspective of making the decision for you versus trying to inform you, if that makes sense. So what I see a lot in the space is someone has an opinion about this browser isn't good because it doesn't fit like this use case. But when you actually dive into that use case, it's a very niche use case that probably just applies to that user. and that blog post isn't really acknowledging that fact. And so that's where you start seeing wording like users should never use, or this is why this is always, and these kind of black and white remarks where they try to make the decision for all users. Um, in the example today, we talked a lot about passkeys and TOTP and security keys and whatnot. And I think that like someone who wants what's best for you is going to cover the pros and cons of the different approaches and let you know maybe maybe we'll let you know what we do, but we'll also say here's why you might also want to consider something else, instead of saying I do this therefore you should do this because this is the best option for everybody. Which, yeah, so just make sure that the advice is coming from a place of making sure they're actually trying to find out what's best for you and not what they think is best for everybody. Does that make sense? I feel like I'm like not making sense today.
I think so. Just
okay.
get a second opinion when you when you research privacy. Get a third or fourth opinion. Get a lot of like different resources out there. There's so many resources where you can do the research and come to your own conclusion, and that's probably the best way to go.
Yeah. Also, Pika said hi, Henry, and I already waved at you, but I'm gonna say hi verbally now. Hello. Oh yeah, someone asked, did you see the Punkt has device linking? And I did, and I still have yet to test it, which is ridiculous for how much I complained about it. It's just like I kind of moved on past the device when I realized you couldn't really do that, but I really should, because with that device linking, like it could be a much more enticing like product for me if I can use Signal on desktop and on the Punkt, because then like it doesn't matter if the Punkt doesn't work for a day, or whatnot. So.
Is that different than the device linking we talked about earlier, or is it the same? Did they add something else that's new?
This was a while ago,
I
actually,
can't
shortly after
I
I
can't
released.
remember which way like the linking works.
The linking was really weird. I don't know if they updated it, but when it came out, essentially you like copy a screenshot of the QR code onto the Punkt, and it
Right.
like you plug in the Punkt, you have to take a screenshot of the QR code, and then you like drag the photo onto the file system into a specific folder, and then the Punkt goes in and like scans it, and like is able to create a linked Signal device essentially. So it's a huge workaround because it doesn't have a camera.
And the Punkt, but it still has to be the primary device,
It still has to be the
right?
primary device. It's not going to do what Molly
Okay.
does, which is allow the Punkt to be a linked device, which I wish they did,
Got
as
it.
we've talked about, because it makes more sense. But the
Yeah, I
option
was
should
wondering if
exist.
that had changed.
Yeah,
Because that is
because
what I would want from it.
me too. Me too. That's what I would want as well. The issue if they did that is then they now have to have a smartphone. Like they pretty much have to advertise you need a smartphone to use the Punkt, which it obviously just goes against the entire point of the device. But I wish they had the option for it so that like Molly does, which is on Molly you can make your Molly client, which is a Signal fork. You can make it either the linked device or you can make it the device. And on Punkt you only have the option to make it the device. But you can link things like
Yeah.
desktop and things. So I guess it doesn't. I guess if you use Android, it doesn't matter because Punkt can be your home base, and then you can use Molly on a smartphone Android device and make that your link device instead. And that way you can still have a smartphone, a Punkt, and a desktop, and the Punkt is your home base.
That is true, but I have an iPhone and can't use Molly on it, so it doesn't
Yeah,
work for me personally.
yeah. Well, don't you have an Android device laying around? No. Oh, but then you have to make that
Yeah, but I
your main.
want Signal
Got
on
it.
my iPhone and on the
You're
Punkt
you're right. You're
and
right.
on my Android. Listen, I want it on all my phones, and I can't do it right now.
I do wish Signal released that ability. I don't know why they don't, because I think you even said that the flag exists, and that's what Molly does. I think Molly just enables a flag to allow a linked phone
I
device.
know.
So
I should
Signal,
make a Signal fork on iOS that's just that flag enabled.
you could probably
Different branding.
do
I
that.
could do it like Molly, I assume.
Yeah, interesting.
I am an Apple developer. Okay, something to think about. Probably won't do that, but
Oop. Have you guys seen a reviewed Hey email? I want to say one of my friends might have used that. Let me check it out.
I
Oh yeah.
don't know much about hate email, but I know I don't think that I'm a fan of the guy that makes hate email, but I don't remember why. Because I haven't. Oh, okay. Take this with a grain of salt, because I haven't looked at it in a long time. But in my mind, there's a reason that I don't like it, and I'd have to look it up and see if I could remember at a later date.
Right. I haven't used it, but one of my friends uses it that I co-work with, and
Hmm.
they really like it. and they say a lot of good things about it. And they showed me a couple features really quickly, and it looked pretty neat. But I don't think I want to say it supports PGP off the top of my head. Do not quote me on that. But I just wanted to mention that like it's not really inherently like a privacy and security oriented email provider. It's more of just a like, you know, cool new take on email essentially. But I don't remember it being inherently any more like security and privacy respecting. Well, I mean, they do try to say it's privacy respecting. I'm just saying it's not going to be like much different from like Proton or Tuda, and those are probably still going to be much better from a security and privacy perspective than Hey will, even if Hey at least is paid and not going to just actively harvest your data like something like Gmail. So, yeah. I guess just to finish this off, I guess I would be looking at Hey, in my head, there's like Gmail, Yahoo, and all the generic services. There's like the gold standard for email, which is still email, but it's like Proton Tuda now. And then there's that kind of that middle ground of like services that don't really have like the best security and privacy features, but they're at least not completely harvesting your data. And I think that's where things like Fastmail fit in, as well
Yeah.
as possibly Hey. And so it's kind of that middle ground tier, which is going to be better than Gmail and whatnot, and probably give you a lot of good features that you're not going to find in Proton and Tuda. Um, but you're going to be sacrificing some of that safety. But I guess they're good for like to recommend for like friends and family as kind of a middle ground option. Just a thought.
Yeah. I was totally gonna bring up Fastmail too when you mentioned that middle ground thing, because that's exactly how I kind of organize the email providers in my mind as well. But it's really hard for me to recommend anything but Proton because Proton is just it's nice to use. I mean, maybe people will disagree with me, but in my opinion,
Yeah.
I use Proton all the time, and it is one of my just even from an experience perspective, it's an email client that I would be happy to recommend to other people. And it also is private and secure, so it's a really nice product. And I am glad that I switched all of my emails to Proton.
Nice. Yeah, I've had a good experience with Proton as well, so I don't have too much to complain, honestly. Like my complaints with Proton don't revolve around the email. It revolve around
Yeah.
everything not email related, honestly. Like all their other
Yeah.
services are just constantly like doing random things. And it still works well and it's still functionally pretty good. It's just like again, like I just don't know what's going on ever on any of my clients because like a feature's on one client but not the other. But the email is overall really solid. Ever since their redesign, I've just been a big fan of Proton. Um, Also, someone did correct me and they said Threads algorithm was there at launch. It was the non-algorithmic feed that launched later on. Your point absolutely stands though. So
Mm.
I guess that they've had
Yeah, I
enough
couldn't
built for a
remember if
while.
that was the case.
But yeah, thanks for the correction. But yeah, I
That
think
does make sense because I feel like I've heard a lot of like people talking about how Threads is very like they really try to push you to follow like big celebrities and like news organizations. They're really like trying to position themselves to replace that part of Twitter, I think. And it seems like
mm,
big organizations might be signing up, which is kind of unfortunate because I think that big organizations and governments and stuff should adopt open standards like Mastodon, but whatever.
it makes more sense. And like here's what people don't understand is that if you host your own Mastodon server, like it's tied to your domain. So let's say you're CNN.com. You just set up a Mastodon home server that's like admin@cnn.com. You can't impersonate that. That supersedes any kind of verification on any platform, and it also means that there is no like central person or central party to decide who's verified. All you Musk bros like should be seeing like who actually gets to keep verification and who doesn't based on their weird classification changes that are constantly happening. Like that's not a thing with Mastodon's model. And I'm not even a big
Yeah.
Mastodon chill, but like that is a big selling point. I think if I was an organization, is it's so easy to verify.
It is really interesting to me that more organizations haven't picked up on that because I think anybody would, if you went to an organization and like were on their IT team, you'd be like out of your mind if you suggested everybody sign up for Gmail for their email instead of having like an at CNN.com email address. Like there are things that like every single organization on earth has their own custom email domain. And some of them are Google Workspace or whatever, but some people self-host. And it's still a thing where like you recognize the importance of having that domain verification and kind of authority with the associated email address. And it gives you a lot of control as an organization as well. So why would you then turn around and do basically the same thing as signing everyone up for Gmail by signing everyone up for Twitter or Threads, for example, when you could instead have your organization be verified, like you were saying? It's weird.
Right. And people are bringing up a good point in the live chat, which is Blue Sky, which, for the record, I am not a fan of Blue Sky, but one thing I do like about Blue Sky, and they are alluding to that, is it does allow personal domains, and also the username model for Blue Sky is very interesting as well, and how it deals with this. So I don't know if you can probably talk about this better than I can, if you can.
Yeah, Blue Sky's like account portability stuff is interesting. It's still, I have to say this when I talk about anything Blue Sky, it's still not fully out yet, you guys.
Yeah,
You can't go to
yeah,
Blue Sky expecting federation and account migration to work. And Blue Sky just released the ability to host your own personal data server where you can migrate. Currently, you can migrate your account to that server, but you can't migrate back because they haven't enabled that yet. It's not a feature that they have. So there's no switching back to the official Blue Sky server once you leave. Um, so it's just incomplete right now. It's there's definitely some interesting concepts there. But overall, as far as like owning your social media platform goes, ActivityPub and Mastodon is still like the way to go, I think, for most people who are really interested in like self-hosting that kind of thing, because Blue Sky basically has split up all of their services into like a lot of different things instead of Mastodon, which is basically all in one. If you install Mastodon, you control the website that you access Mastodon on, you control all the moderation, you control all the accounts on your instance, you control everything pretty much. Whereas if you host a personal, I think it's personal data server, whatever PDS stands for in Blue Sky, um, you're really not you still don't control most aspects of your account. You don't even control like who your account sends messages to and how that gets federated because all of that like moderation and relays and stuff are outsourced to third-party relays, which you're not self-hosting right now. And as far as I know, are still controlled by just a few companies like Blue Sky themselves. And you still have to access your personal data server through like the official Blue Sky client and website. There isn't like you don't go to your own website and access it like you do with Mastodon. You have to still go through the Blue Sky app and that kind of thing. And it's just that you're still not totally in control at the moment with Blue Sky stuff. And the model doesn't make as much sense to me as just ActivityPub does,
I
in
have
my
a
opinion.
question. I have a question for you actually, because the whole you have to still access Blue Sky's website thing
Hmm.
on at face value, and maybe I'm wrong, so I guess it's a genuine question. I feel like that is a good thing because, for example, when I receive links from people, like let's say there's someone that posted something cool on the InfoSec Mastodon home server. When I click that link, it never opens in my freaking Mastodon client ever because like you can't associate all these different home servers to a Mastodon client, so it's going to open in your default web browser. And there's also no easy way for me to like engage with that post because like the login, like let's say I open it in my browser and it's going to say login to infosec home server. I can't, like, how do I pull that up into my home server? So I have this weird usability thing, and I don't know if I'm using Mastodon wrong or incorrectly, and there's an easier way to deal with this. Alternatively, I think what Blue Sky's doing makes more sense, which is like it's one central website that you access, and therefore everything's better integrated. But am I wrong?
Yeah. There's always advantages to centralization like that.
Right.
It's usually going to be more convenient. I will say I don't have this doesn't bother me too much on Mastodon because you can paste any of these links into the search box in Mastodon and it pulls up that post, even if your home server doesn't know about it. So finding that post to reply to it is not super challenging. I very rarely use Mastodon on mobile though, so um,
It's better on
it's definitely
desktop.
like easier on desktop, I will
Yeah,
say.
definitely.
Um,
It's
but
an issue.
I can see why that would be annoying.
Yeah, it's definitely an issue on mobile because I want it to open in my Mastodon client. I feel like my Mastodon client, which is Toot, doesn't do a great job with the search. And for the record, I guess I haven't really tried like just pasting the URL, but I feel like the search on Toot just isn't great. And I feel like it's so many clicks just to pull up the thing just to engage with it. And so what happens is I normally just don't even engage with it, and I just send it to my Signal note to self, and then I never even give the post engagement because I'm not even logged in to deal with it. Um, So I guess that's like one of my complaints with Mastodon. Someone said there's an extension for easy redirects now. So I guess like what would be really interesting if you're using a custom DNS provider, there should be a way, in theory, to have like an ability to auto redirect on a DNS level. It would be really hard to be able to recognize if it's a home server based on the domain, and then but if it does recognize it's a Mastodon home server, it can somehow redirect that automatically to your own home server. But maybe.
I don't know if you could do that with DNS. Because of like HTTPS wouldn't work.
uh,
You'd have to like impersonate a web server, and you can't do that with SSL.
Well, with NextDNS, can't you set up NextDNS to essentially function as your certificate authority on your device, which is not recommended for security for the record. But if you do that, then because they even suggest against it, pretty much like if you can't access a site via NextDNS and it blocks it, it actually gives you a whole warning of like NextDNS blocked this website. But to do that, you have
Mm-hmm.
to like pretty much make NextDNS like give you your SSL certs, which is not ideal. Um,
Do they? I haven't seen that option in NextDNS. I don't know if they do that.
Let me see.
I didn't think that they did.
Here, you can. I'll look into it. Um, let's see if I can find it. It's a block
If Toot
page.
supports a URL schema, you could make an Apple shortcut to send any Mastodon link to Toot via the share sheet. You definitely can do that for a lot of Mastodon apps on mobile, where you can do like share and then open in a Mastodon client. Toot might do that, and I think the official Mastodon app does. I'm gonna try to see if I can do that actually with Toot, because I use that as well on iOS. But if not, you could probably do it with shortcuts. It's an extra step.
Yeah, it's called a blocked page, NextDNS block page, and I do think that it has to do with the CA.
But they let you install a CA to do that? That's what I'm wondering. Because I know that they have a block page, but I didn't know it worked with SSL, like with a custom.
Let's see.
I
That's one
guess
thing I don't.
Toot does not have an open in Mastodon share sheet, so maybe that's just the problem with that client, which is a shame because there's a lot of things that I like about the Toot client on iOS, and there's a lot that I don't. But I
I
don't use
just
Mastodon on iOS too much myself, so
I still have yet to find a Mastodon client I'm super happy with.
yeah, that's fair
Uh,
enough.
and yeah, there's a block page. Enabling may cause breakage if the NextDNS root CA is not on your devices. So there's a way
Huh.
to have a NextDNS root CA. Yeah, here, I'll send you a link. Well, I can't do it because you're on Signal and I don't want to pull up my Signal. But um, how to install and trust NextDNS root CA. If you type that into your search engine, it should come up. Um,
Interesting.
and there's a way to set
So
that up.
yeah, I mean, I guess if you do that, then technically you could do that at the DNS level with NextDNS. I don't know if that is
I don't think it's a built-in feature
what
though.
I would do. No, it's
Yeah,
not. But I mean, they could technically build it, but I probably wouldn't use it. I wouldn't recommend it.
yeah, cool. I for the record, I don't necessarily recommend people trust the NextDNS root CA unless they know what they're doing. Just for the record,
Yeah.
I'm not going to do it, but it's just more of a hypothetical.
Hmm.
Um, someone
Does
asked,
Signal do any moderation of groups because of any DMA requests or any other illegal stuff reported by a government? Is there even an option to report a message in Signal? I don't think so.
No, no,
Signal has no access to anything that you send, so they can't really do anything. Unlike other apps like WhatsApp, for example, which will send all your messages in plain text to their support team if you report them.
yeah. Also, unlike Telegram, which doesn't even do end-to-end encryption with their groups. So
Yeah.
let's see. Someone asked, what do you think of Fastmail? Well, someone asked, Elk is not cutting it anymore. So I love Elk. It is probably overall like my favorite Mastodon client because it's web based and I actually really love the interface. I think it's the best interface. It feels just like what I wish Twitter felt like back when I used Twitter. The issue is it hasn't been working for me consistently um, on Elk. So for some reason, it's just broken on my mobile web browser. It'll work. I install the web app, and then out of nowhere, I open the web app, and it just doesn't load anything. It's just a black screen or a white screen, depending if it was on dark or light mode. So it's kind of broken for me, and I don't use it because of that. But
Weird.
I really liked Elk, and I wish it worked, and it works fine on desktop, just not on mobile for some reason. And I don't know if it's something that has to do with lockdown mode. I've tried disabling lockdown mode for Elk. I've tried disabling content trackers. I've tried disabling everything, and it still gives me that issue. So,
Yeah, it doesn't look like it because I can open. I just found out the other day that Mozilla.social uses Elk as like their main interface. But if I open Mozilla.social in my iPhone with lockdown mode enabled, it loads fine. So
no, it loads. This is what I'm saying. It loads fine. I can add it to my like desktop home screen, which essentially makes it a web app, which is its intended use case, and then it'll
uh,
open a couple times. It's like after a while though, it just stops loading things. So
weird.
it's not an initial bug. Yeah. Don't worry,
Doesn't make a
Pablo.
lot
I'll
of
get
sense.
back to your question. But yeah, I really want to like
We did
Elk.
kind of talk about Fastmail though.
Yeah. But yeah, regarding Fastmail, I have yet to use Fastmail myself, but it looks really nice. People who I know use it love it. And no, it doesn't have like the cool end-to-end encrypted features that are native to things like Proton and Tuda. Um, but it seems overall good. I have seen like things to make me think it's overall trustworthy for your privacy in a sense of like they're not going to be just selling your data and completely just invading your data for no good reason. Um, and you said Proton doesn't support unlimited aliases, which is your reason. But I guess could you not use simple login
Yeah,
instead?
you probably should be using something like simple login rather than like built-in aliases for the most part. I think most people should. Something I'll say about Fastmail that I found out recently is that they do this annoying thing that I don't think any email provider should do, where if your subscription ends, you'll lose your account and they recycle addresses. So after a few weeks, other people can claim that. And I don't think that address recycling is really acceptable from any email provider, in my opinion. So I really dislike that about Fastmail, and I don't usually recommend providers that do that. There's another like privacy focused provider that does that too, and it's the reason I don't like them either.
Yeah. I didn't know that. I have to look into that. I didn't hear about this issue before, but that is a little concerning because if you stop
Yeah,
paying
I
for
just
it,
found
then
that
that's
out.
an instant security issue where someone could claim your email. Interesting.
Yeah.
Um, let's see.
Oh, sounds like an iOS issue. Calyx OS is fine. I don't know if that's referring to Mastodon.
I think it's referring to
Um,
elk.
I yeah, I will say, yeah, there are a lot of iOS issues that I don't like.
Yeah. Well, and for the record, like I said, I use elk on other devices, just not on iOS because of that issue I was having. So, yeah, I like elk. Someone asked, what are your thoughts on the LightPhone II or the Sunbeam F1 in terms of pricing and security for the dumb phones compared to Punkt? Generally, I don't know. I have looked into the LightPhone, but it didn't support Signal, which is my main messenger. I don't know about the Sunbeam F1. I haven't heard of it. But generally, that's always where the privacy and security of dumb phones is going to be lacking in comparison to something like the Punkt or a smartphone, which is the lack of good end-to-end encrypted messenger options, which frankly is like what the main purpose of a smartphone or a cell phone or anything is messaging and calling people. And so if you don't have basic security with your messages and phone calls, then I guess as long as your phone isn't used for anything super sensitive, like if you're just texting people, hey, leaving RN, period, and then you reserve your sensitive conversations for other places, I guess it's fine, but people really have to be aware of the limitations and the lack of end-to-end encrypted messaging on dumb phones. I do believe, doesn't LightPhone maybe support, is LightPhone the one that supports WhatsApp? I know LightPhone allows you to install a few third-party clients for certain things, and they just have like 4 or 5 apps. But
I
yeah,
don't think so.
Light.
But you totally nailed it. That's my main problem. Because the Sunbeam F1, I'm looking it up now, it looks basically like a modern flip phone. Like just a dumb phone, but like an older flip phone. But I assume it supports modern networks like 5G, because that's the main issue with like getting an old flip phone nowadays. But yeah, without like that kind of app support, I don't really know what I would do. I would switch to like a flip phone or something like that immediately if I could still access like basic messaging apps with end-to-end encryption. Like if there was a Proton Mail app and a Signal app, I'd be pretty happy with that. But you are pretty much stuck with like whatever SMS your carrier provides and not much else because they just weren't built for that kind of security, which is annoying.
Yeah, and I'm fact checking this right now, but it says here on our website it may also be possible to offer alternative messaging platforms like Signal, WhatsApp, Telegram, etc. in the future, but we don't currently have plans or a timeline for that functionality. So if you're willing to give up end-to-end encryption for all your contacts, then sure, I think one of these phones can be great, but I'm not willing to do that, and I think most people probably shouldn't do that. I think it's a big downgrade for something that's really core and vital to the way you communicate with people in your life. And if you do want something that's a little bit more dumb, I would at that point recommend something like dumbing down a smartphone, installing a custom ROM. Like you can install something like Calyx with no Google Play services and just install like 5 apps on it and use something like O Launcher, which is actually what I have over here on my Pixel. So like this Pixel right here is running Calyx OS and it has like 5 or 6 apps on it, which is pretty much what Jonah described, which is an email provider, Signal, and like a browser and a password manager. And that's it.
Yeah.
So the only thing I don't like about it is how big it is. It's like as big as my head. It's ridiculous. So aside from that, I wish, and that's actually what I really want to see more than anything. I want to see, and I think people are complaining about this on our forum. I want to see a small Android device that supports custom ROMs that doesn't feel ridiculous to use. And I'm so tired of companies releasing these massive phones. Look, it's the size of my freaking head. Like, look at this. This is ridiculous. It's not okay.
Yeah,
A lot of
a
rants
Google
today.
Pixel Mini. That might tempt me to switch.
Yeah. The 4A, man. The 4A was like the smallest, most modern Pixel. Like modern-ish Pixel.
It's still kind of big,
It is
but it
still
was
kind of
nice.
big. Yeah. Someone asked what will Proton launch next? Virtual payment cards, web browser, search engine. Hot take. I hope they don't really release too much, and I hope they polish up their current services before they release more things. That's my hot take.
I agree. But I could definitely see them adding virtual payment cards and phone numbers to Proton Pass.
Me
If I
too.
had to predict the future with my crystal ball, that would be most likely. But yeah, they should finish all the stuff that they started.
I agree. That'd be really nice. And I think it would really clean up the ecosystem and make it a stronger selling point away from something like Google. Because I can't really do that yet. I can't tell people, hey, just move over to Proton from Google. I can't. I can do it for email, but they're going to be like, well, what about photos? And I would go, well, Proton Photos, are you willing to join a beta for one of your devices? Like, I can't do that. That's nonsense. Um, so, yeah. Yeah, so I'm seeing some iPhone mini people here, and I totally agree. Because the iPhone mini, I think, is
Yeah.
like the perfectly sized phone. And I will say, the base model, like iPhone 15, isn't that much bigger than the mini. So it's somewhat usable still, but I still think it's too big. Like, I think the mini is what they nailed. And I wish that they released the mini with better battery. Like, I wish, because I think Apple kind of gave up on the mini because not many people bought it, and also the battery life issues. But I know for a fact that, like, if Apple really wanted to, they could have tried to make the battery life better on the iPhone 13 mini and continue to improve that to where it became a little bit more usable. But,
Yeah. Philip Johansson said Calyx OS supports the Motorola phones. Are they also huge?
yeah,
And yes, I think they all are
yeah,
gigantic.
that
Pretty
was my
sure.
first thing. I saw the Motorola phones and I go, oh my God, Calyx OS, verified boot, Motorola phones, possibly smaller phones. And I looked them up and they were all matte. They were like bigger than the Pixels.
Yeah.
It was insane. Um, it's really cringe actually, like how big phones have become. And I'm really upset too with the Zenfone. So apparently they promised custom ROMs, then patched it to stop workarounds from working at all. And also the Zenfone doesn't have much security update support either way. I think the Zenfone 10 moved up to 4 years, which is still now like very low. Because didn't Google just say? Did Google just say 6? Is Google at
Well,
6?
Google, I think, has said 7 for a while, and Samsung is the latest to also do 7, I believe.
Wow. And then there's
Samsung is the latest to get Qualcomm to commit to 7 is my memory. Because Google is
Nice.
able to do it with their custom chip. But
Right. And then you have iOS, which is normally like 5, 6 plus. So when you have a
hmm
Zenfone, you're automatically, if you buy a Zenfone 10, you're already committing to like pre-planned, you know, your phone can only last 4 years tops with any security updates. And it doesn't support custom ROMs. So, and it's kind of pricey if given that, because you can buy a Pixel for cheaper than a Zenfone, and the Pixel will actually have more security life support than the Zenfone.
yeah.
So that's that, because I was looking at the Zenfone for a hot sec, and when I saw those things, I'm like, well, it's just not worth it to me. Um, so kind of sucks because I think it is kind of the last hope for a decent Android phone. Also, hot take: the Zenfone isn't that small. If you look at the side by side for a 13 mini and a Zenfone, the Zenfone is still quite a bit bigger than the 13 mini. Like quite a bit. Like you can probably like fit a finger above the 13 mini, and that's where the Zenfone is. And I still again think that the 13 mini is like where I want a phone to be.
Was the Zenfone thinner though? I feel like it wasn't as wide, but maybe I'm making that up. It might just be bigger in all dimensions.
Maybe. Let's see. Someone said, Amen, Henry. Reply, Proton polishing their existing tools first. Yeah. I feel like that's not a hot take. I feel like most people fall in the boat of like not wanting more. Because I remember when Proton Pass, I think, was released, most of like the top comments on Reddit and stuff were just why? like we're still waiting for these 10 other features. Why? And so yeah, which like kind of sad because like yeah, they're releasing a new thing and it's kind of cool that they're releasing a new thing, and I think overall now Proton Pass is like overall in a good place. But yeah, I think people are kind of upset.
hmm
Um do you want to do a last call for comments?
Sure.
Yeah, it's been about 2 hours now, so what do
Oh,
you
really?
use?
That's crazy.
Yeah, yeah. What do you use in the Proton ecosystem?
Mostly just Proton Mail.
Hmm.
I occasionally use Proton VPN, and a couple times I've like uploaded things to Proton Drive to like share them, but I'm not fully all in on Proton Drive. When they add photo backup, I might add it as like a second photo backup option. I'm not sure, but I
Yeah,
don't have a lot of use for cloud storage because of the whole NAS setup, so it just isn't super exciting to me.
right. Yeah, I agree. I think that what you described is honestly pretty much probably most people. I think most people are going to use just the mail the most, and then the VPN maybe if they like it grouped up with their mail subscription, then they don't have to pay for another VPN provider. And
Yep.
then like I don't know why you would. I guess calendar ish. Like I tried using calendar, but I always move away from the calendar because it kind of frustrates me after a while because it's so because like I block I do calendar blocking, and it's so frustrating every day to do calendar blocking on Proton Calendar because there's no like easy like drag and drop. You can't just like touch the end and move a block around like you can on other calendar providers. And it's just really frustrating to use. I have to literally click every single block, click edit, adjust the time manually, and I just think it's a little, it's just clumsy. So
Yeah.
yeah, and Proton Drive I think is kind of wild to use right now in its current state as like your main drive storage because I just think it's so incomplete and it's gonna feel so limited. But yeah,
Yeah, it really depends on like what platforms you use though. Because if you don't use Linux, if you have like a Windows or Mac device, I feel like the Proton Drive clients are pretty good right now. And if I was like just on my laptop, I could definitely see using it instead of like iCloud. But I also just have an existing setup that I don't want to switch from. The other thing I'll say is that Proton Pass is actually like really enticing to me, but I haven't switched because I already have a password manager that I liked. But if I was like setting up from scratch right now, I'd probably go all in on Proton Pass as well. It looks really nice, but I'm not going
yeah,
to migrate to it yet.
yeah. I'm awaiting. I'm with you. Proton Pass because I was complaining earlier about like interfaces and just not having a password manager I really liked, and actually Strongbox being my favorite one, which is a KeyPass client. And I agree with you that Proton Pass is the only one that I feel incentivized to use, but I don't want to do it until they have like a desktop client, which is already kind of here almost. I think it's in beta, right? I've seen people
Yeah.
post the web app in beta, where essentially it like adds it to your computer. It gives you offline access to your passwords. And at that point, the only concern of mine would be the whole like, well, my what if I get locked out of my Proton account? How do I access my passwords? But I'm pretty sure I could just do a backup of my passwords and still access them through a KeyPass client or something. So it's kind of a
Yeah.
non-issue if you just do proper backups. But yeah, Proton
The
Pass, I
only
agree with
reason
you.
I haven't switched, the only reason I haven't switched is because I have like a whole family setup and some password sharing going on with some other people in my current password manager. So it's very hard to move now, which is annoying because I'd have to
Fair,
like convince them to move too, and I just don't want to deal with it.
fair. That's how I get you.
Yeah, it really is.
Someone asked, "Is your Go Incognito course still relevant today?" I would say like 90+% of it actually is. Anything that's not directly relevant, we have a changelog with some of the issues in Go Incognito on GitHub. That's all linked if you go through the course, and you can look at some of the mistakes and some of the things that are definitely updated. I would say the main thing that is outdated is like references to specific services. But I'd say most of the information is still up to date. And I'd say the quality of the information, I'd say like 20% of the quality could be better now, because now there's just more information. We have more research on certain things, and we can probably do better now, which is why there's a V2 coming soon. But I would say if anyone's still going through the V1 right now, you're still going to get a lot of benefit from it. But I also don't think you're wrong for waiting for V2 either, because V2 is still going to be a lot better, I think. So I don't think you can go wrong with V1, but just obviously just keep in mind that it is a little bit outdated in some capacity. But I think a lot of the thought processes and like the way you think about privacy and security will not be outdated, and it is pretty timeless from that perspective.
But you'll get access to V2 as well when it comes out. So,
True. Yeah. Anyone gets
right?
V1
Yeah,
premium will automatically get V2. It's kind of a lifetime purchase.
right.
So yeah. Um. Yeah. I guess we can end it there. I guess just final things to share. If you like this and you like us answering questions and you got value from this and you like what we do here at TechLore, we've been really busy working on some really big things back here, and we really can't do that without all of your support. We've been pretty much like trial testing a clips editor, and they've been doing a great job. So if you've been taking a look at TechLore clips and also surveillance support clips, they've been managing that, and they're uploading 3 times a week, every single week this year so far. And we just can't do that without the kind of support that we receive from all of you. And so if you want to join us and help us spread privacy and security to more and more people and other digital rights things, definitely check out our Patreon. That's one of the best ways to do so, patreon.com/techlore. But I definitely still acknowledge that Patreon isn't the best platform. So like you can also do LibrePay. You can also do Monero. We have Ko-fi. We have so many other ways to contribute on techlore.tech/support, I think is what it is. Also, if you buy any of these things, we also have affiliate links on our support page as well. So if you like Proton or something, or any other services that we talk about, you can check if we have an affiliate link for them, and that's another way to support us. So thank you all for tuning in. Thank you all for keeping yourself safe out there and educating yourself and the people around you. Thank you, Jonah. And just thank you for tuning in and giving us some engagement. We enjoy talking about this kind of stuff. So, yeah. Cool. All right, I'm going to end it now. End the
All
stream.
right.
Cut them out. Bye, everybody.
See ya.